Welcome to Monk's Temple. Let us begin by doing nothing at all. Just for a moment, let the body rest exactly where it is. Feel the weight of it, the warmth of it, the simple fact of its existence. There is nowhere to go, nothing to fix, nothing to become. In this single moment, you are already complete. The problem is that you have been told otherwise your entire life. You have been told that you are broken, that you are a sinner, that you are separate from the divine, that you must earn your salvation, that you must climb a ladder of perfection to reach a God who sits somewhere far away, judging your every move. This is the great misunderstanding that has haunted humanity for thousands of years. And into this misunderstanding stepped a man who did something that had never been done before. He removed God from the center of religion and placed man there instead. Not man as a worshipper, not man as a beggar asking for favors, but man as the very source of the divine. His name was Siddhartha Gautama, and he became known as the Buddha, the Awakened One. His revolution was so radical, so complete, that the world of belief has still not fully recovered from it. Think about what it means to grow up in a culture that worships something outside of you. From the moment you are born, you are handed a map. This map tells you where God lives, what God wants, and what will happen to you if you disobey. You are told to pray, to chant, to follow rules, to attend buildings made of stone where priests tell you how to think. The map is very detailed, but it has one fatal flaw. It points everywhere except back at you. You spend your entire life looking at the map, arguing about the map, trying to follow the map perfectly, and you never notice that the territory the map describes is already inside your own chest. The Buddha's first and most profound act was to tear up the map. He said, "Stop looking for something you already are. Stop praying to a God you have projected onto the clouds. Come home. Come back to the one place you have never actually visited. Come back to yourself." Let me tell you a story about a man who spent his life searching for something he already had. His name was Thomas, and he was a collector of spiritual experiences. He had traveled to India and sat at the feet of gurus. He had gone to Peru and drunk ayahuasca with shamans. He had climbed mountains in Tibet and received blessings from monks. His apartment was filled with statues, singing bowls, and incense from a dozen different traditions. He could speak eloquently about chakras, karma, and the third eye. But Thomas was deeply unhappy. He was anxious, restless, and secretly afraid that he had missed the point entirely. One night, after returning from yet another retreat, he sat in his living room surrounded by his collection of sacred objects. He felt utterly empty. He looked at a golden statue of the Buddha on his shelf, a statue he had paid a great deal of money for in Bangkok. And for the first time, he didn't see a holy relic. He saw a piece of metal. He realized that he had been treating enlightenment like a possession, something to acquire and display. He had been collecting spiritual artifacts the way other people collect stamps or coins, hoping that the accumulation would eventually fill the hole inside him. But the hole was still there. In that moment of despair, he did something he had never done before. He ignored all the statues. He ignored all the teachings. He just sat on his floor, in the middle of his carefully curated shrine, and did absolutely nothing. He stopped trying to be spiritual. He stopped trying to find God. He just sat. And as he sat, a strange thing happened. The emptiness he had been trying to fill suddenly didn't feel like an enemy. It felt like space. It felt like room to breathe. He realized that the hole he had been trying to fill was not a defect. It was an opening. It was the very doorway he had been looking for. This is the doorway the Buddha invites you to walk through. He is not interested in adding anything to you. He is not interested in making you a better person, a more moral person, a more successful person. He is interested in helping you subtract everything that is hiding the person you already are. He is like a sculptor who looks at a block of marble and sees the statue already inside. His work is not to add clay, but to chip away the excess stone. The excess stone is your ego. The excess stone is your beliefs. The excess stone is your fear. And when all the excess is gone, what remains is not a new creation. What remains is what was always there. What remains is godliness itself. If this journey of subtraction, this journey of coming home to yourself, speaks to the deepest part of you, then consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. This is not a place where we sell you new beliefs. This is a place where we help you put down the heavy load of the old ones. Let us walk this path of unburdening together. The modern world is obsessed with the idea of arrival. We are constantly trying to get somewhere. We want to get the promotion, get the house, get the relationship, get the enlightenment. We treat life like a train journey where happiness is always the next station. But the Buddha's entire teaching can be summarized in a single phrase: you have already arrived. The problem is that you won't open your eyes to see it. You are standing in a garden filled with flowers, but you are staring at a map of a garden on the other side of the world. You are breathing air that has sustained every human who ever lived, but you are worrying about the quality of the air you will breathe tomorrow. You are alive, right now, in this moment, but your mind is living in 1,000 other moments, most of which will never happen and many of which are already over. This is the psychological insight at the heart of the Buddhist revolution. The mind creates suffering by living everywhere except here. It creates a sense of self by clinging to memories of the past and fantasies of the future. It weaves a story, a narrative, a character, and then it spends its entire energy defending that character from the simple truth of change. The body ages. The story doesn't want to age. The body gets sick. The story wants to be invincible. The body will die. The story pretends it will live forever. This war between reality and the story is what the Buddha called dukkha, the basic unsatisfactoriness of existence. It is not that life is inherently painful. It is that we are constantly fighting with life. We are constantly demanding that the river stop flowing so we can step into the same water twice. And the river, being a river, refuses to obey. Let me pause here and invite you to simply notice your own mind. What is it doing right now? Is it listening to these words? Or is it planning what to eat for dinner later? Is it judging whether this teaching is any good? Or is it comparing this to something else you have heard? Just notice. Don't change anything. Just become aware of the activity. That awareness itself is the first step out of the prison. That awareness is the cave from which you can watch the storm. You are not the storm. You are the one who sees the storm. And the one who sees the storm is never touched by the rain. There is a phrase that psychologists sometimes use, and you have probably heard it. They talk about a God-shaped hole. The idea is that human beings are born with an innate emptiness, a void that can only be filled by the divine. We spend our lives trying to fill this hole with money, with relationships, with status, with pleasure, but nothing ever quite fits because the hole was specifically designed for God. This is a comforting idea, especially if you already believe in God. It explains our restlessness, our longing, our constant sense that something is missing. But the Buddha looked at this idea and asked a radically different question. He asked, what if the hole is not meant to be filled? What if the hole is the point? What if the emptiness you feel is not an absence of something, but the presence of something so vast that your mind cannot yet comprehend it? The Buddha would say that the God-shaped hole is actually the ego-shaped hole. It is the space left behind when you stop identifying with the small self. The reason you feel empty is not because you are missing a relationship with a being outside of you. It is because you have been living inside a tiny room your whole life, and you have just sensed that there is a mansion on the other side of the walls. The emptiness is the size of the mansion trying to get your attention. The tragedy is that most people, when they feel this emptiness, try to build more rooms in the tiny house. They try to make the ego bigger, more impressive, more secure. They think that if they can just make the tiny house grand enough, it will finally feel like enough. But it never does. A mansion cannot be built inside a closet. You have to knock down the walls. The Buddha did not find God when he became enlightened because he stopped looking for a being and started experiencing a quality. He did not meet a person. He did not hear a voice. He did not see a throne. He saw the nature of reality. He saw that everything is connected, that everything is impermanent, that everything is without a separate self. And in that seeing, he realized that the divine is not a thing to be found, but the very fabric of existence itself. You cannot find God the way you find your car keys. You can only realize that you have always been swimming in God the way a fish swims in the ocean. The fish does not need to find water. The fish needs to stop thinking it is dry. Let me tell you about a woman named Priya who was raised in a very religious home. She was taught from childhood that God was a loving father who watched over her, but also a stern judge who kept a record of her sins. She prayed every night. She went to her place of worship every week. She followed the rules. But as she grew older, the doubts began to creep in. How could a loving God allow so much suffering? How could a just God send good people to hell just because they were born in the wrong country and believed the wrong things? The questions ate away at her faith until one day, it collapsed entirely. She became an atheist. She declared that God was a myth, a fairy tale for people who couldn't handle reality. For a while, this felt liberating. She was free from the guilt, free from the fear. But soon, a new feeling emerged. It was a feeling of being utterly alone in a vast, meaningless universe. The God-shaped hole had not been filled by atheism. It had just been emptied of its old furniture, and now it echoed. She felt more lost than ever. One evening, in desperation, she picked up a book about the Buddha. She expected more myths, more fairy tales. But what she found was something entirely different. She found a man who did not ask her to believe in anything. He asked her to look. He asked her to investigate her own experience. She started to meditate, not as a religious act, but as an experiment. She sat and watched her breath. She watched her thoughts. She watched the feelings of loneliness and meaninglessness arise and pass away. And slowly, something shifted. She realized that the loneliness was just a thought. The meaninglessness was just a story. Beneath them both was a vast, quiet awareness that had never been lonely, had never needed meaning, had never been born and would never die. She had not found God. She had found the space in which God, if God existed, would have to appear. She had found her own fundamental nature. This is the psychological sophistication of the Buddha's approach. He does not ask you to replace one belief with another. He asks you to examine the believer. Who is it that believes? Who is it that doubts? Who is it that feels empty? When you look for this believer, this feeler of emptiness, what do you find? You find thoughts about yourself. You find memories of the past. You find images and ideas. But do you find a solid, permanent self? The Buddha says look closely. Look right now. Can you find a thinker behind the thoughts? Or do you just find more thoughts? Can you find a feeler behind the feelings? Or do you just find more feelings? The self you are so desperately trying to protect and promote turns out to be a ghost. It is a collection of mental events that you have mistakenly believed are one thing. It is like looking at a rushing river and thinking it is a solid ribbon of blue. It is like looking at a movie screen and thinking the characters are real people. The ego is a very convincing movie. But if you look closely, you can see the light. This is where the path becomes practical. If the ego is a movie, then your suffering is not caused by the events on the screen. It is caused by your belief that you are one of the characters. When the character in the movie is afraid, you feel fear. When the character is angry, you feel anger. When the character is rejected, you feel heartbreak. You are completely identified with the protagonist. But what if you could shift your attention? What if you could stop watching the movie and start noticing the screen itself? The screen is never burned by the fire on screen. The screen is never drowned by the water on screen. The screen is never touched by the drama. The screen just holds the images, perfectly still, perfectly at peace. You are the screen. The movie is your life. And the Buddha is simply teaching you how to stop being hypnotized by the story. Let me offer you a simple practice to try right now. Bring your attention to your breath. Just follow the air as it enters your body and leaves your body. Do this for a few breaths. Now, notice that there is a part of you that is aware of the breath. It is not the breath itself. It is the knower of the breath. Now, notice that there is a part of you that is aware of that knowing. It is awareness aware of itself. This is not a trick. This is the natural structure of consciousness. It can always turn back on itself. It can always know itself. Most of the time, we are so busy knowing objects that we forget to know the knower. We are so busy watching the movie that we forget the screen. The practice is simply to remember, again and again, to rest as the screen. The movie will keep playing. The thoughts will keep coming. The feelings will keep arising. But you don't have to be possessed by them. You can watch them with the same gentle interest with which you watch clouds passing through the sky. The clouds come. The clouds go. The sky remains. We have been speaking about the ego as if it were a thing, a kind of entity that lives inside us and causes trouble. But this is itself a kind of illusion. The ego is not a thing. It is a process. It is something you do, not something you have. The Buddha, with his extraordinary psychological precision, broke this process down into 5 distinct activities. He called them the 5 aggregates, or the 5 heaps. They are like 5 streams of energy that flow together to create the illusion of a solid self. Understanding these 5 streams is like understanding how a magic trick works. Once you see the mechanism, you can no longer be fooled by the illusion. The first stream is the body, the form. This is the physical world. It is the sensation of your feet on the floor, the sound of my voice in your ears, the light entering your eyes. It is pure, raw, uninterpreted experience. Before the mind labels anything, there is just this. Just sensation. Just energy. Just matter. There is no story here. There is no me or mine. There is just what is. The second stream is feeling. This is not emotion in the full sense. It is the primitive, automatic tone of any experience. Every sensation that arises is immediately tagged with one of 3 labels: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That's it. That's all feeling is. It is the most basic feedback system of the organism. This feels good. This feels bad. This feels like nothing. It happens in a fraction of a second, below the level of conscious thought. It is completely natural, completely impersonal. The third stream is perception. This is where the mind starts to recognize and label. It takes the raw sensation and the basic feeling and it says, "Oh, I know what that is. That is the sound of a bird. That is the feeling of hunger. That is the color blue." Perception is the mind's filing system. It takes the infinite, unique flow of experience and slots it into familiar categories. This is necessary for survival. You need to know that the fuzzy shape in the grass is a snake, not a stick. But perception also begins the process of solidifying reality. It turns the flowing river into discrete moments, into things. The fourth stream is mental formations. This is the big one. This is where the ego really gets built. Mental formations are all the reactions you have to the perceptions. This includes your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions, your habits, your desires, your aversions. This is the story department. Perception says, that is the sound of a bird. Mental formations say, I love birds. That sound reminds me of my grandmother's garden. I miss my grandmother. I feel sad. Why does everything have to change? In an instant, a cascade of reactions floods the mind. This cascade is driven by past conditioning, by karmic habits, by the accumulated momentum of a lifetime of reacting. It is automatic. It feels like it is you thinking these thoughts, but it is actually just the machine running. And the fifth stream is consciousness. This is the raw awareness that makes all the other streams possible. It is the knowing quality itself. It is like the light that illuminates a room. The light does not care what it illuminates. It does not prefer the beautiful painting to the ugly stain on the carpet. It just illuminates equally. Consciousness is like that. It is the pure capacity to know. It is untouched by the content it knows. It is the screen, not the movie. Now, here is the crucial point. The ego is what happens when we take these 5 streams and we identify with them. We grab onto a particular thought in the mental formations and we say, this is my thought. I am thinking this. We grab onto a sensation in the body and we say, this is my pain. I am in pain. We grab onto a feeling and we say, I am angry. But if you look closely, you will see that the I, who is supposed to be doing all this grabbing, is nowhere to be found. There is just the grabbing itself. There is just the identifying. The ego is the act of identification, not a thing that does the identifying. Let me give you a modern example. Imagine you are driving your car and someone cuts you off. What happens in the 5 aggregates? First, there is form. You see the car swerving in front of you. Light hits your eyes. Sound hits your ears. Second, there is feeling. The experience is unpleasant. Your body tightens. Third, there is perception. The mind labels it. That person is a reckless driver. That was dangerous. Fourth, there are mental formations. This is the explosion. How dare they? They could have killed me. People are so selfish. I should honk my horn. I should speed up and teach them a lesson. The thoughts race, the emotions flare, the intention to act arises. And fifth, there is consciousness, aware of all of it. Now, where is the ego in all of this? Is it in the form? No. Is it in the feeling? No. Is it in the perception? No. Is it in the mental formations? The mental formations are just thoughts and emotions, arising and passing away. They are not a self. They are just events. Is it in consciousness? Consciousness is just the knowing. It is not a self either. The ego is the belief that all of these events belong to someone. It is the belief that there is a continuous character having this experience. But if you look for that character, if you look for the owner of the experience, you will not find it. You will only find more experience. This is what the Buddha realized under the Bodhi tree. He saw that the self is a construction, a useful convention, but ultimately an illusion. And seeing this, he was freed from the endless cycle of protecting and promoting that construction. He was freed from suffering. This is not a philosophy to be believed. It is an experience to be cultivated. You can test it for yourself right now. Bring your attention to your present moment experience. Notice the 5 streams flowing. Can you feel the body sitting here? That is form. Can you notice if the experience is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? That is feeling. Can you notice the mind labeling things? That is perception. Can you notice the thoughts and moods moving through? Those are mental formations. Can you notice the awareness that is aware of all of this? That is consciousness. Now, ask yourself, which one of these is you? Are you your body? Your body is constantly changing. Cells die, new ones are born. The body you have now is not the body you had 7 years ago. Are you your feelings? They change from moment to moment. 1 minute you are happy, the next you are sad. Are you your perceptions? They depend entirely on your culture and your conditioning. Are you your thoughts? They arise unbidden, often against your will. You didn't choose most of the thoughts you had today. They just appeared. Are you consciousness? Consciousness is just the witness. It is like a mirror. Are you the mirror, or are you the reflections in the mirror? The Buddha suggests that you are the mirror. You have just forgotten, because the reflections are so fascinating, so compelling, so dramatic. But the mirror remains. The mirror is peace. The mirror is freedom. The mirror is what you have been looking for all along. We live in a culture that worships answers. We want the 5 steps to happiness, the 7 secrets of success, the 10 laws of the universe. We want our knowledge packaged into bullet points that we can consume quickly and move on. But the Buddha's approach was the exact opposite. He understood that the quality of your life is determined not by the answers you collect, but by the questions you ask. A skillful question is worth more than 1,000 unskillful answers. An unskillful question, no matter how cleverly it is answered, will only lead you deeper into confusion. This is why the Buddha developed a sophisticated taxonomy of questions. He did not answer everything. He was not a talking encyclopedia. He was a physician. And like any good physician, he knew that the first task is diagnosis. You do not give medicine before you understand the disease. You do not answer a question before you understand the mind of the questioner. Some questions are asked sincerely, out of a genuine desire to end suffering. These questions deserve careful attention. Some questions are asked to show off, to trap the teacher, to win a debate. These questions deserve a different response. And some questions are simply unhelpful. They lead nowhere. They are like digging a hole in the sand. You can dig all day, but you will never reach solid ground. The Buddha identified 4 types of questions, based on how they should be handled. The first type is the question that deserves a direct, categorical answer. This is a question about a fundamental truth, asked by someone who is sincerely seeking guidance. For example, what is the cause of suffering? The answer is direct, craving. Is there a path to the end of suffering? The answer is direct, yes, the Noble Eightfold Path. These are the building blocks of the teaching. They are given clearly and without equivocation. The second type is the question that deserves an analytical answer. This is a question that is too broad, or poorly framed, or based on a misunderstanding. The teacher must first analyze the question, break it down, and reframe it before it can be answered. Someone might ask, is the self eternal? This question assumes there is a self to begin with. The Buddha would not answer yes or no. He would analyze the question itself. He would say, if by self you mean the 5 aggregates, they are not eternal. They are constantly changing. If by self you mean something beyond the aggregates, that is not something that can be spoken of in terms of existence or non-existence. He reframes the question so that it can lead to understanding, not more confusion. The third type is the question that deserves a counter-question. This is a powerful psychological tool. It is used when the questioner is stuck in a wrong view, and the only way to free them is to make them examine their own assumption. Someone might come to the Buddha and say, my mind is so chaotic. Meditation doesn't work for me. I must be doing something wrong. The Buddha might respond, who is it that knows the mind is chaotic? Who is it that is trying to meditate? Show me this one who is failing. By asking a question back, the Buddha is redirecting the attention from the content of the experience to the awareness that is having the experience. He is using the question as a finger pointing away from the problem and toward the solution. The fourth type is the question that should be put aside. These are the famous unanswered questions. Is the universe eternal? Is it not eternal? Is it both? Is it neither? Does the enlightened being exist after death? Not exist. Both? Neither. The Buddha called these the thicket of views, the wilderness of opinions. He said that entertaining these questions is like a man who has been shot by a poisoned arrow and, before letting the doctor remove it, demands to know the name of the man who shot it, the color of his skin, the height of his mother, the type of wood the arrow was made from, and the kind of feathers on the fletching. That man will die before he gets his answers. The arrow of suffering is already in your heart. The task is to remove it. The questions about the origin of the cosmos, or the metaphysics of the afterlife, are distractions. They are the ego's last-ditch effort to stay relevant, to keep the game of speculation going. The Buddha's silence on these matters was his most profound teaching. He was saying, this line of inquiry will not lead to peace. Let it go. In our modern self-help world, we are obsessed with the fourth type of question. We want to know our life purpose. We want to know what happens when we die. We want to know the secret meaning of the universe. We read books by channelers and mystics, hoping for a glimpse behind the cosmic curtain. But the Buddha would say, you are asking the wrong questions. You are trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution, while ignoring the very real puzzle of your own suffering. The only question that matters is the one that can be answered in this very moment. Is there suffering now? What is its cause? Can I let it go? This is the only inquiry that leads to freedom. Let me tell you a story about a man named David who came to a meditation teacher with a list of questions. He had spent years studying philosophy and theology. He had read Kant and Hegel, Aquinas and Maimonides. He had a question about the nature of time, a question about free will, a question about the problem of evil. He presented them to the teacher with great confidence, expecting a long and complex discussion. The teacher listened patiently. When David was finished, the teacher said, "These are very interesting questions. But tell me, have you eaten breakfast today?" David was taken aback. "Yes," he said, "I had some toast." The teacher said, "Did you taste the toast?" David thought for a moment. "I was thinking about these questions while I ate. I don't really remember the taste." The teacher smiled. "You are so busy asking questions about the nature of reality that you are missing reality itself. The toast was real. The taste was real. But you were not there. Come back to the toast. Come back to the taste. And then, if you still have questions, we can talk." David realized in that moment that his intellectual questions were a way of avoiding the simple, direct experience of being alive. He had been using his mind to escape the present moment, not to understand it. This is the trap of the spiritual seeker. We think that more knowledge will save us. We think that if we can just find the right answer, the right teacher, the right technique, we will finally be free. But the Buddha's approach is the opposite. He is not giving you more to carry. He is helping you put down what you are already carrying. He is not giving you a new belief. He is helping you see through the old ones. The path is not about accumulation. It is about simplification. It is about stripping away, layer by layer, until nothing is left but the simple, radiant fact of awareness itself. There is a common misunderstanding about the Buddhist path. People often think it is a solitary pursuit, a kind of spiritual selfishness. They imagine a monk sitting alone in a cave, indifferent to the suffering of the world, focused only on his own liberation. And it is true that there have been such monks. But the Buddha himself was not one of them. After his enlightenment, he did not stay under the Bodhi tree forever. He got up and walked. He spent the next 45 years walking across the dusty plains of northern India, teaching anyone who would listen. He did this not because he had a duty, not because he felt obligated, but because compassion arose naturally from his realization. He saw that other beings were suffering, and he could not simply ignore it. His enlightenment was not a private attainment. It was a public gift. This is why the Buddha placed such a strong emphasis on compassion. He taught that it should be cultivated before enlightenment, not after. He understood the psychology of this. If you wait until you are fully enlightened to develop compassion, you may not bother. The state of liberation is so overwhelmingly blissful, so utterly complete, that the motivation to help others might feel like an intrusion. It would be like asking someone who has just reached the summit of a mountain to go back down and carry others up. They might be too busy enjoying the view. But if you cultivate compassion on the path, while you are still climbing, while you still feel the struggle, then that compassion becomes part of your very fiber. It becomes a habit, a natural inclination. Then, when you reach the summit, you do not forget those below. You see them with new eyes. You see that they are you, just in a different place on the same mountain. Think of it like learning to play a musical instrument. At first, you have to practice scales. It is boring. It is repetitive. Your fingers hurt. You sound terrible. But you keep practicing because you want to be able to play beautiful music. If you stop practicing the scales, you will never play the music. Compassion is the scale. Enlightenment is the music. You have to practice kindness, generosity, and patience even when you don't feel like it. You have to practice them especially when you don't feel like it. Because those are the moments when the ego is strongest, and those are the moments when the practice of compassion cuts through the ego like a knife. Let me tell you about a woman named Elena who worked in a very high-pressure corporate job. She was ambitious, competitive, and successful. She was also miserable. She was constantly stressed, constantly comparing herself to others, constantly afraid of being surpassed. She started meditating to try to find some peace. And it helped, somewhat. She became calmer, more focused. But there was still a hard kernel of ambition at her core. She was using meditation to become a better competitor, not to become a freer human being. One day, a new employee joined her team. This young woman was struggling. She was clearly in over her head, making mistakes, falling behind. Elena's first instinct was the old instinct. This was competition. This woman was weak. Elena should distance herself. But something from her meditation practice, some small seed of awareness, made her pause. She looked at the young woman and saw, not a rival, but a human being in distress. She saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear Elena carried in her own heart. Without thinking, Elena walked over to her desk and said, "Hey, you look like you could use a hand. I've been where you are. Let me show you a few things." She spent the next hour helping the new employee. She didn't do it to be nice. She didn't do it to gain a favor. She did it because, for a brief moment, the wall between self and other had crumbled. She had seen herself in that young woman. And in that act of helping, Elena felt a joy that was deeper than any joy she had ever felt from a promotion or a bonus. She realized that her meditation practice had been missing this element all along. It had been all about herself. Now, for the first time, it was about something larger. This is the hidden science the Buddha spoke of. Compassion is not just a nice add-on to the spiritual path. It is an essential component. It is the solvent that dissolves the boundaries of the ego. When you are truly focused on the well-being of another, the constant internal chatter about me and mine subsides. You forget yourself. And in that forgetting, you experience a glimpse of your true nature. You experience what it is like to be free from the burden of self-concern. It is a taste of enlightenment itself. This is why the Buddha said that the most important quality to cultivate on the path is loving kindness, or metta. It is the wish that all beings, without exception, be happy. This is not a sentimental wish. It is a radical training of the mind. You start with yourself. You wish yourself well. Then you extend that wish to people you love. Then to neutral people, people you neither like nor dislike. Then, and this is the hard part, you extend it to people you dislike, to your enemies. If you can sincerely wish for the happiness of someone who has harmed you, you know that your practice is bearing fruit. The ego cannot survive in that space. The ego needs enemies. It needs people to blame. Compassion starves the ego of its fuel. So, as you go about your day, you can practice this. When you see a stranger on the street, you can silently wish them well. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you be at ease. When you encounter someone who irritates you, you can do the same. It will feel fake at first. It will feel like a lie. But keep doing it. The heart is a muscle. It grows stronger with use. And one day, you will find that the wish is no longer fake. It is genuine. And in that moment, you will have taken a major step toward your own liberation. We live in an age of extremes. We are told to work harder, longer, faster. We are also told to practice self-care, to rest, to disconnect. We swing back and forth between burnout and laziness, between and collapse. We are like a pendulum, never finding the still point in the middle. The Buddha observed this same tendency in the people of his time, and he offered a solution that is more relevant today than ever. He called it the middle way. It is not a compromise. It is not a dull average. It is a dynamic balance, a path of wisdom that avoids the extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification. Before his enlightenment, the Buddha himself tried both extremes. He was born into luxury as a prince. He had every pleasure imaginable. And he found that it did not lead to peace. The pleasures were fleeting, and the pursuit of them left him restless and unfulfilled. So he left the palace and tried the opposite extreme. He joined a group of ascetics and subjected himself to severe penances. He starved his body until he was nothing but skin and bones. He held his breath until his head pounded. He thought that by punishing the body, he could free the spirit. But he only found more suffering. He nearly died. Finally, he realized that both paths were dead ends. Pleasure and pain are two sides of the same coin. They are both tied to the ego. The ego wants pleasure. The ego wants to avoid pain. The path of freedom is not about getting what the ego wants or punishing what the ego wants. It is about seeing through the ego altogether. This insight led him to the middle way. He took food. He rested. He sat down under a tree with a balanced mind, neither grasping for pleasure nor fleeing from pain. And in that balanced state, he became enlightened. The middle way is not about finding the perfect amount of pleasure. It is about finding the equanimity that is not disturbed by either pleasure or pain. It is about learning to ride the waves of experience without being thrown off balance. In modern life, we are constantly being thrown off balance. Our nervous systems are under assault from all directions. The news is designed to keep us in a state of outrage or fear. Social media is designed to keep us in a state of comparison and envy. Our jobs demand more and more of our time and energy. It is no wonder that burnout has become a global epidemic. Burnout is what happens when you have been fighting the current for too long. You have been pushing, striving, resisting, and finally, you have nothing left. The tank is empty. The Buddha would look at burnout and see a spiritual crisis, not just a professional one. Burnout is the result of identifying too strongly with the role of the doer. You believe that you are your work. You believe that your value depends on your output. So you keep producing, keep achieving, keep pushing, because to stop would be to face the terrifying emptiness of not being anyone. But the emptiness is not terrifying. It is only terrifying to the ego. To the true self, the emptiness is home. It is rest. It is peace. Let me tell you about a man named Marcus who was a classic overachiever. He was a partner at a prestigious consulting firm. He traveled constantly. He worked 16-hour days. He had a beautiful house, a loving family, and a bank account that most people would envy. But he was dying inside. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't enjoy a meal without checking his email. He felt like a machine that was running without oil, the parts grinding against each other, smoke rising from the engine. Finally, his body forced him to stop. He had a health scare, nothing life-threatening, but enough to wake him up. His doctor told him, "If you don't change, you will be back here with something much worse." Marcus reluctantly agreed to take a month off. He went to a meditation center, not because he wanted to, but because he didn't know what else to do. The first week was torture. His mind screamed at him. It listed all the deals he was missing, all the emails he wasn't answering, all the ways his career was crumbling. He was physically present, but his mind was still at the office. In the second week, something began to shift. He started to notice the thoughts without believing them quite so much. He saw that they were just noise, just habits. In the third week, he had an experience that changed him. He was sitting in the garden at the center, watching a bee move from flower to flower. The bee was utterly absorbed in its task. It wasn't worried about the next flower or the flower it had just left. It was just there, fully present, doing what bees do. Marcus felt a wave of sadness. He realized that a bee had more peace than he did. A bee was more at home in the universe than a human partner at a consulting firm. And in that sadness, a strange freedom arose. He saw that he had a choice. He could keep running the rat race, or he could learn to live like the bee. He could learn to be present, to do one thing at a time, to rest in the activity rather than striving for the result. When Marcus returned to work, he was different. He still worked hard, but he was no longer possessed by his work. He set boundaries. He took lunch breaks, real ones, where he actually ate food and tasted it. He left the office at a reasonable hour. He spent time with his family without glancing at his phone. His colleagues thought he had lost his edge. But Marcus knew he had found something far more valuable than an edge. He had found a center. This is the middle way in action. It is not about quitting your job and becoming a monk. It is about bringing the awareness of the monk into your job. It is about doing what you do, but with a different relationship to the doing. You are no longer the slave of your work. You are the master of your own attention. You work when it is time to work. You rest when it is time to rest. You are not dragged around by the demands of the world because you are anchored in the stillness of your own being. The anchor holds, no matter how rough the sea. The Buddha spoke of something he called the deathless. It is a beautiful word. It points to a dimension of experience that is not subject to birth and death, to coming and going, to arising and passing away. It is the unconditioned. It is what remains when all the conditioned phenomena, all the five aggregates, have been seen through. It is not a place you go after you die. It is a reality you can touch right now, in this very life. It is the still ground beneath the flowing river. It is the silent space between two thoughts. It is the awareness that witnesses the entire drama of your life and is never touched by it. The deathless is not something you achieve. It is something you remember. It is your original face, the face you had before your parents were born. It is the consciousness that was present when you were an infant, before you learned to speak, before you learned to think, before you learned to be someone. That consciousness is still here. It has never left. It has just been obscured, covered over by layer after layer of conditioning, belief, and habit. The path is the process of uncovering it. In daily life, we can touch this deathless in small ways. Anytime you are fully present, fully awake, with no agenda, no grasping, no aversion, you are touching it. Anytime you look at a tree or a cloud or a child's face and you are not thinking about it, not judging it, not wanting anything from it, you are touching it. Anytime you sit in meditation and the thinking mind briefly subsides, leaving only pure awareness, you are touching it. These are glimpses. They come and go. But they are enough. They are proof that the deathless is real, that it is available, that it is not just a philosophical concept but a living possibility. Let me tell you a story about a man named Joseph who was dying. He was in hospice, with only a few weeks left to live. He had been a successful businessman, a husband, a father. Now he was lying in a bed, his body failing, his life shrinking down to a single room. He was afraid. He was afraid of the pain, afraid of the unknown, afraid of ceasing to exist. A volunteer at the hospice was a meditation teacher. She sat with Joseph and asked him if he wanted to talk. He poured out his fear. She listened. When he was done, she said, "Joseph, you have spent your whole life being someone. You have been a son, a brother, a husband, a father, a businessman. You have worn many masks. Now, all those masks are being taken away. Your body is failing. Your roles are ending. It is natural to be afraid. But I want to ask you something. Behind all those masks, behind all those roles, who are you? Not Joseph the businessman. Not Joseph the father. Just Joseph. Is there anyone there? Joseph was quiet for a long time. He closed his eyes. The teacher sat with him in silence. After a while, tears rolled down his cheeks, but he was not crying. He was smiling. He opened his eyes and said, "There's still someone here. It's not what I thought. It's not a person. It's just presence. It's just awareness. And it's not afraid." In his final weeks, Joseph stopped being afraid. He didn't become religious. He didn't start believing in heaven. He simply rested in that presence. He had touched the deathless, not after death, but in the midst of dying. And it was enough. This is the promise of the Buddha's teaching. It is not a promise of eternal life in some heavenly realm. It is a promise that you can discover, here and now, a dimension of your being that is not touched by the changes of life and death. You can live from that dimension. You can die from that dimension. And in doing so, you can be free. So how do we bring this into our daily lives? How do we live from the deathless while still doing the laundry, going to work, and paying the bills? The answer is practice. Simple, consistent, patient practice. Every time you meditate, you are training your mind to recognize the difference between the conditioned and the unconditioned. You are learning to see thoughts as thoughts, not as reality. You are learning to see feelings as feelings, not as commands. You are learning to rest as the witness, the screen, the space. And over time, that resting becomes more natural. The identification with the movie becomes weaker. The piece of the screen becomes your default state. You can also practice in daily activities. When you are washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. Feel the warm water. Feel the smoothness of the plate. Hear the sound of the water. If thoughts come, just let them come and go. Don't follow them. Come back to the dish. This is meditation. When you are walking, just walk. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel the air on your skin. See the world around you without labeling it. This is meditation. When you are talking to someone, just listen. Really listen. Don't prepare your response while they are speaking. Just be present with them. This is meditation. Life itself becomes the meditation. Every moment becomes an opportunity to touch the deathless. The Buddha said that the path is like a flame that goes out. It is not that the flame is destroyed. It is that it is no longer burning. It has found rest. You too can find rest. Not in a future heaven, but in this very breath. Not in another life, but in this one. The deathless is here. It is now. It is waiting for you to stop running long enough to notice. One of the most beautiful aspects of the Buddha's teaching is the way he related to his students. He did not see them as followers. He did not want disciples. He wanted friends. He wanted fellow travelers. This is a radical departure from the typical religious model. Most teachers want to be elevated. They want to be worshipped. They want to be the source of truth. The Buddha wanted to be a mirror. He wanted to reflect your own potential back to you. He wanted you to see that you had the same capacity for awakening that he had. He was not special. He was just awake. And you could be too. On the night he died, his last act was to ask for questions. He wanted to make sure that no one left with any doubt. He wanted to clear up any confusion. He was not worried about his legacy. He was not worried about his reputation. He was worried about the people in front of him. He wanted them to be free. And when no one asked any questions, he didn't assume that meant they all understood. He made them check with each other. He said, "If you are too shy to ask out of respect for me, let a friend ask for you." He was creating a community of mutual support. He was saying, "You are responsible for each other. You are in this together." This is the spirit of the Sangha, the community of practitioners. It is not a club. It is not a social organization. It is a group of people who are committed to the same journey, who support each other, who remind each other, who challenge each other. You cannot do this alone. The ego is too clever. It will trick you into thinking you are making progress when you are just spinning your wheels. But when you are with others, when you hear their questions and their insights, you get a clearer picture of your own mind. You see your blind spots reflected in them. You learn from their struggles. You are inspired by their dedication. In the modern world, we are often isolated in our spiritual seeking. We read books alone. We meditate alone. We listen to podcasts alone. This is valuable, but it is not enough. We need connection. We need to talk to others who are on the path. We need to hear their stories and share our own. This is why communities like Monk's Temple are so important. They are digital sanghas, places where fellow travelers can gather, not in person, but in spirit. They are reminders that you are not alone. There are millions of people around the world who are asking the same questions, facing the same struggles, seeking the same freedom. You are part of a vast, invisible fellowship. Let me tell you a story about a man named Ken who felt completely alone in his spiritual journey. He lived in a small town where no one meditated, no one read Buddhist books, no one talked about enlightenment. He felt like a freak. He kept his practice secret. He would get up early in the morning, before anyone else was awake, and sit in his living room, watching his breath. He felt like the only person on earth trying to wake up. One day, he discovered an online forum for meditators. He was nervous at first, but he posted a question about a difficulty he was having. Within hours, he had dozens of replies. People from all over the world, from different cultures and backgrounds, shared their own experiences. Some had the same difficulty. Some had overcome it. Some offered encouragement. Ken sat at his computer, tears streaming down his face. He was not alone. There were others. There were many others. He was part of something. From that day on, his practice deepened. He still meditated alone in his living room, but he no longer felt alone. He felt connected to a global community of fellow travelers. He felt the support of thousands of unseen friends. This is the power of fellowship. It sustains you when your own motivation flags. It reminds you why you started when you have forgotten. It celebrates with you when you have a breakthrough. It holds you when you are struggling. The path is long. The path is difficult. But it is infinitely easier when you walk it with others. So, as we come to the end of this long reflection together, I invite you to remember that you are not alone. The voice you are listening to is just one voice, but it is connected to a vast chorus. The path you are walking is just your path, but it runs alongside countless others. We are all headed in the same direction, toward the same awakening, the same freedom, the same peace. And we will get there together, or not at all. Not because we are dependent on each other in a literal sense, but because the realization of oneness is the very goal itself. When you awaken, you will see that you were never separate. You will see that the other travelers were always you, just wearing different masks, playing different roles, walking different parts of the same mountain. And you will love them as yourself, because you will finally know that they are yourself. May you find the courage to keep walking. May you find the wisdom to keep questioning. May you find the compassion to keep sharing. And may you discover, in this very life, the peace that passes all understanding, the freedom that was never lost, the home you never left. Thank you for walking this path with me today at Monk's Temple. Until we sit together again, go in peace. Go in love. Go in awareness.